Welcome back to another episode of the Successful Driver Podcast presented by Aero Truck Sales. Really appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us today. And I'm excited to have perhaps the best voice in the entire company, Matt Quick from Cincinnati branch, one of our salesmen there. Matt, appreciate you coming on, my friend.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
I'm setting the expectation for your voice very high, very quickly. Like I think you and Jason Church, who we had on the show a little bit earlier, you guys, you got two of the more unique voices, and you've got a great accent. I just want to hear your story, your backstory. A little bit about you, how you got into the trucking industry, all that good stuff.
Okay, so a long time ago, I grew up on the southwest coast of England, working for my father's construction company while putting myself through college in graphic design.
Wow.
And I had the opportunity to work overseas in heavy construction, actually building timber roller coasters. So I built them in several countries.
Nice.
One thing led to the other. Did a job in America, came back to America to meet some friends for vacation between jobs, between Oslo, Norway, and Milan. And I decided to hang around for a little bit in the States. Realized that construction was a very difficult industry to break into when you're without a well-known name. So some friends of mine said, you know what, people love to talk to you. Have you ever tried, consider trying sales? Well, my answer was, no, I don't know anything about sales, right? And they're like, well, people like to talk to you, so you should try sales. So back in the day, this was over 20 years ago, when you found jobs in the good old-fashioned black and white newspaper instead of on the internet. And I came across an advertisement for car sales for Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Actually, back then it was Plymouth, Chrysler, and Jeep. Job provided benefits, which is what everybody needs, right? So I thought I'd give it a go. And through some hard work and some strong ethic, I realized that I was very good at it. I got promoted to management within the first couple of years in car sales. And I spent 18 years at that same dealership managing salespeople, dealing with customers, building relationships, maintaining relationships. After 18 years, though, the same showroom every day, you kind of want to change, right? So I had a personal relationship with some of the employers here at Aero in Cincinnati. And they said, well, why don't you come try to sell some trucks for us? And I'm like, well, it can't be that hard, right? It can't be any harder than selling cars. So I gave it a go and loved it from day one. The company welcomed me with open arms. Everybody here was great, very, very professional. Within less than a year, they asked me if I'd take the job as sales lead. Well, I said, well, absolutely, I'd love to. So I've been doing that now for almost the last 2 years. Loved every minute of it.
So, all right, I hear this all the time and it drives me nuts. Selling cars is just like selling a truck. And you've got a few years here to know that that's not necessarily the case. What are the big differences in your opinion, coming from the car industry to the truck industry? What are the big differences you see there?
Okay, so the average customer in the auto industry actually comes in to see you at your location most of the time at the weekends, because that's really the only time they can bring their families out to make sure that, husband, wife, son, daughter, however big the family unit might be, to make sure they can all be accommodated inside a passenger vehicle. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's more of a emotional buying experience for a car, which is a necessity just to get somebody to work every morning and just to get, the kids to baseball practice, so on and so forth. The trucking customer, the trucker today that needs equipment, he's buying a business piece of equipment. Okay. This is not an A to B vehicle, and his livelihood depends on this. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they're so much emotionally driven by the appearance or, the paint colors or the paint schemes on these trucks or, the wheel patterns. It's not about that for these guys. These guys need a piece of equipment to do the job. Okay. And they want it as quickly as they can possibly get it. Okay. And they want it to last for as long as it possibly can. Mm-hmm. And that's where we step in.
I always joke the gravity of buying a used truck is more similar to committing to buying a house than it is just your car. There's a lot of, like you just, the exact point you said, your livelihood kind of depends on a truck having success. Well, a big issue with your house can really affect your livelihood more than maybe a car breaking, a car breaking down, So I think, the gravity of this purchase is so different than the car industry. So, that's something I don't think people always realize on the outside, but when you're in it here, it's just, like you said, and the smart ones, I think, and the right ones are treating it like a piece of business equipment. I think that's the valuable way of approaching it, and not being maybe distracted by some of the features all the time, but understanding the value of the truck you're purchasing and making sure it aligns with the industry you're in. So Matt, the questions we always like to ask every single person, we're on the quest to find out what makes a successful truck driver. For you and your experience working with truck drivers every day, what do you think makes a successful driver?
What makes a successful driver? Okay, well, we got to start with somebody who's got a business plan. Okay. You have to have a business plan, know who you intend to be hauling for, not just for the next week or month, but for the next long term. Do you have a reliable haul source? And is it going to pay you enough to keep your truck on the road, pay your bills, feed your family, and keep you interested in doing it, right? So they got to have a plan. You also can't be in too much of a rush to get started with this. If you're making, rash decisions as a driver, and you'll just take the first piece of equipment that becomes available, and it might not exactly match your needs and your requirements, then that truck is not going to serve you to its fullest potential. You have to have the ability to save some of your money, put some of your money away. We can cover you with all the warranties that we can, but there's always unforeseeable expenses to trucking that just, they jump out at you, and you better have some money to pay for those repairs, because if you don't, then you're off the road until you do. So planning, being aware, and having a good advisor. You can very easily take, $10,000 as a down payment, finance a truck, leave there with it, and still know nothing about what you're doing. We here with Arrow try to be more of an advisor rather than a salesperson. Okay. There's a lot more information that goes along with being a truck driver than just buying a truck, putting diesel in it, turning the key, and answering a phone for a haul. So
absolutely,
it's a lot of things, but the success of most of our drivers, a lot of it is, because of us, because of what we do. We have a lot of first-time buyers, and we try to give them the big picture and make sure they're making the right decision for their future.
Well, I don't really ask, you kind of answer that a little bit, your role in the truck driver story. How are you helping truck drivers find that success out on the road, Matt?
I do have a couple of accounts of my own who are companies that are welcoming new drivers. They're having difficulty finding owner-operators, and some of our new owner-operators have trouble finding a haul source. So I try to connect the two together so they can help each other out. I also like to help customers understand here that when I'm sitting across my desk, offering trucks, the truck payment, offering, extended warranties, and make sure that they understand exactly how those warranties work, exactly what's covered, and exactly how to use them when they need to use them. But I also want to make sure that they understand that I am not sitting here selling them equipment. I'm sitting here selling them a business. And that's exactly how I treat it. And it's then when you open up those conversations, you get so much more from the customer that you wouldn't normally hear if they were just here to buy a truck knowing everything about it.
Right.
So that's, I think, how I step in. I want to make sure that whether they ask me for the information or not, I make sure I give it to them.
Well, I mean, you're shooting people straight. It's very obvious based on what you're saying there. And I think the value of transparency is something that we're obviously talking a lot about at Arrow. Our motto, clear, simple, use truck buying. We're trying to become a more, we're always striving to be transparent, to be trucker advocates. What do you think the value of transparency is in the trucking industry?
So there's a huge trust factor. And the trust factor is that we have so many truckers today that are a lot of the time new to our country, just like I was 20 years ago, right? I had to understand how things worked. And the people that we have from some of our local communities, they have difficulty communicating because their language is so much different than ours. So, we try to communicate with them in every way possible, whether it's through email, whether it's through texting or on the phone. They find one of those options easier than the other two. And they don't know how this whole thing works. So they know they've got a license, know they can drive. And that's all they want to do is build a future for themselves. Okay. And make as much money as possible in doing so. But they really need our guidance more than you think. And if you're transparent with them, and they start to, trust us in what we do, and they see the benefits after their first purchase, then how they spread the news about how we've helped them within their communities, it accelerates very quickly. Mm-hmm. So we gain a lot of referrals. But I try to think about it this way. We've really got to, hold our customer by the hand sometimes and really make sure that they clearly understand what we're saying, be fully transparent about it, like you say. And I think that's where you really start to break ground.
We talk a lot about trying, part of the reason that we are, doing this podcast is to provide information from across the industry to help set expectations in some way, for this industry on, learning from people, in a variety of perspectives and understanding driver success in the perspectives of a bunch of different people. And I think it's trying to set expectations, but try to effectively communicate those expectations too, for our customers. And it's been really cool to hear a lot of stories here at Arrow about, the value of transparency and how, we all are, what that, it all means something different for everybody. Like that's something we've kind of noticed, there's a lot of, core principles there associated with transparency, but everybody's kind of got a different perspective on it. And that what you just said is it with, maybe people that aren't necessarily native to this country initially, having to, some learning curves in some areas and trying to be a business partner with them here at Arrow. That's a really unique perspective that I hadn't heard to this point doing this show. That's a great point. And that's really interesting. And you kind of you touched on a little bit too, technology's changed a lot. How have you noticed, the last couple of years with the trucking industry, some contactless, periods of time, some limitations on, person to person or face to face, interactions, what have you kind of noticed about the adaptation of the trucking industry with technology becoming more important there?
Okay. So we know that especially during times like right now, inventory is not as plentiful as we've seen it before, simply because the trucking industry is so strong right now, which means it is not only harder to find the customer's equipment, but the customer now understands that if they want to advance with the equipment that they need, they have to make decisions before they can necessarily get in contact with this truck, physically drive it, get to see it in person, So today's modern technology, between Cincinnati's branch here or any one of our other branches across the US or in Canada, we can provide our customers with a lot of audio and video information on the truck to put their mind at ease so that they can make the decision on purchasing the truck over the phone or via email with us or through text messaging with us without actually seeing the truck. And that's what they need to do to just secure their assets today. And I think that if it weren't for some of today's tools, we wouldn't be able to get them enough reliable and transparent information as quickly as they need it. And these are all everyday tools that people use. So again, very user-friendly. It doesn't matter what language you may speak. It's easy to understand. that technology has allowed us to move further forward. Facebook, we all use Facebook, right? Instagram, Twitter, all of these tools, almost everybody's using. So we try to put ourselves available in as many formats as possible, not only to get recognition, but it's a good way to feed our customers information.
Do you think the behavior of the buyer will ever return to what it was before COVID? Or do you think this more push towards a, technology and information readily available at your fingertips is just going to continue to boom?
In what's now 22 years in retail automotive sales, there has always been a constant shift in how electronic we're becoming with information. And it's been happening year in, year out, and just when you think that we're at the peak of where we could ever be with technology, there's always something else around the corner, I think. Okay. So I don't think it's ever going to stop. I don't think it's going to return to the way it used to be. We have always in trucking been a very telecommunicative industry rather than in person. Mm-hmm. We have a lot less people that actually come to our lot when they can get the upfront information they need over the phone. And luckily for Arrow, and luckily for our customers over the last 18 months, whatever it may have been, we've been able to stay ahead of the curve with, adapting our tools a little more. And now that I think we've made it so easy for the customer with those tools, I don't expect them to go back to doing things the old-fashioned way. No, I don't. Now, there are a lot of, the old school truckers out there. They want to see it, drive it, and everything else before they'll give you an answer. But we're really hoping that people are going to allow us to continue doing business the same way because we've proved that it is more efficient and easier.
Well, Matt, I appreciate your time, my friend. It's been a pleasure talking to you as always. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
That's another episode of The Successful Driver. Thank you so much for listening, watching, wherever you are consuming this. We really appreciate you. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll catch you later.